This show was so disappointing and just uninteresting and outright bad that I'm not even sure if I want a second season. Obi-Wan Kenobi is like one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I loved him in the prequels, and I really was excited when they announced this show. Obviously, we all were. But then the first 2 episodes came out, and you know what I thought about those. And then the third one, all 3 of those episodes were not great. And then the 4th one came out after I made my video, and then it was even worse than the first 3 episodes. And then the last 2 were better, but they still did not save the show at all. This show was just lacking in ambition, kind of like I was after I saw it, and it also just had a hard time justifying its existence, because honestly, we didn't really need to know any of this. The character arc that he goes on basically just takes him from the same place he was at the beginning, in a big giant circle around the galaxy, back to where he was at the beginning of the show. The whole show feels very unnecessary. The only reason I even enjoyed this show a little bit was because there were cool moments, right? There were cool things that we got to see, but those are things that you kind of had to include no matter what you decided to make the show about. Like seeing Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fight, seeing in the finale when Obi-Wan chops his mask in half and you see part of Hayden Christensen's face. That was honestly awesome. I love the flashback where we got to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen fighting. The Order 66 sequence in the beginning of the first episode, while it did feel cheap and didn't look great, I did love seeing Order 66 from like a different perspective. I especially love the scene at the end of the second episode where Obi-Wan finds out that Anakin is Darth Vader. That was really probably my favorite moment in the show. And then of course seeing Vader just at all was really cool. I love seeing Palpatine a little bit at the end of the 6th episode. So there were cool things that we got to see, but it doesn't feel like there was a good story that was connecting all of those things. We just got to see some snippets of some cool things that were happening in the galaxy, but the actual narrative that we were following was not interesting at all. First of all, they repeated plot beats in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th episode. The first episode, Leia gets kidnapped. 2nd episode, Obi-Wan goes and finds her. 3rd episode, Reva kidnaps her again. 4th episode is Obi-Wan finding her. That just goes to show that this series really did not need to be a series. It could have been maybe a cool movie, if that. It honestly didn't really feel like it had enough of a narrative drive to be a movie. But it definitely didn't work as a show, especially when you're repeating plot beats in a short little 6-episode series. That's how you know that you've run out of ideas. When it comes to the characters, I think Obi-Wan was good, okay? I liked Ewan McGregor's performance. Really didn't think there were any problems with him. He was just trapped in this boring story that I didn't care about. Ewan McGregor, of course, did a great performance, and the character felt pretty consistent. Reva, who's basically the second main character, I guess. I like her arc. When I sort of figured out in the 5th episode, oh, she was a youngling, Anakin tried to kill her, and now she's out for revenge. I liked that idea, okay? I thought that was a good idea for a character, but it just felt like out of place in this show. Like, why does that have to be here? And also, the way that she goes out pursuing that motivation of wanting to get revenge on Vader feels weird. Like, she's mad, oh, Vader killed a bunch of Jedi, and he killed all my Jedi friends, so I'm gonna go out and kill a bunch of Jedi to get close to Vader. It didn't make any sense to me. So maybe if they would have fixed that up a little, maybe even just made Reva into her own show, that would have honestly been interesting on its own. Just a Reva show. That could have been cool. But no, they decided to cram it into Kenobi and bog down the story. And it also took away from the big cool fight in the final episode. They kept cutting to Reva going and trying to capture Luke Skywalker or whatever, and just felt like it took away from the coolness of the fight, and there could have been other things going on besides her storyline. When it comes to Princess Leia, I guess I kind of like the fan service, but I don't think her character was consistent. I mentioned that in my first video. Feels like sometimes she's super mature and she's wise beyond her years, and sometimes she's super immature and has this attitude and is constantly trying to rebel against Obi-Wan. It feels weirdly inconsistent to me. Also, it messes up the canon. It messes up the timeline a little bit. So I'm not sure if I really liked that Leia was in the show, but I did like getting to see Princess Leia, and I thought her final scene with Obi-Wan Kenobi was nice. So when it comes to the main characters, they weren't terrible, but there definitely were some changes that could have been made to enhance the show. But my biggest problem with this show, honestly, besides the narrative, is how it just looks bad. Like, it looks looks really cheap. All the shots have like this ugly, desaturated look, especially in the desert, which I did not enjoy at all. There were like 3 desert planets in this show. There was like no diversity in the background, so it was all like this boring, bland, like brown, yellow look. In A New Hope, Tatooine has more of an orange look to it, and it looks a lot better, and the same in Revenge of the Sith. But here it's like this ugly, brown, desaturated look that looks cheap, and also just, it's unpleasant to look at. And that's the same with a lot of the other shots. They're all very desaturated and it's not very colorful. Star Wars is known for having these popping locations that are really interesting and vibrant and teeming with life. But here, it's just like these desaturated locations. And also you might have noticed that there aren't very many aliens in this show. Like a lot of the extras are just people, even though in Star Wars there's supposed to be a lot of diversity in the species and lots of different aliens and stuff, and droids too. So it just feels like they didn't spend that much money on the show. Like when you look at the Book of Boba Fett and especially the Mandalorian, they look like full-fledged movies at some point. They're TV shows on movie budgets, and it's really cool to see all these super well-done special effects and these beautiful looking shots. But here, honestly, the action looks pretty bad and it's unintense, and it looks like they didn't put that much money into the choreography. The shots are cheap and they're not very dynamic, like they were trying to make the shots smaller so that they wouldn't have to show as much because it would cost less money. You'd think that this would be the show that they'd sink the most money into, right? They wouldn't put more money into this new Andor show that they're making, which looks like it had a bigger budget than this show, just from the trailer. They should have put all their money into this show. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Why doesn't he have the coolest show? But it looks like they spent all their money on all these other Star Wars shows instead of this one, which probably contributed to the reason it was so bad. And that could have cleaned up some of these little tiny things that they had happen that really just bugged me. Like in the 4th episode, which had Tala escape by open hand slapping a stormtrooper and then he falls over. That was honestly one of the stupidest things I ever saw. And then Obi-Wan is able to escape with Princess Leia by putting her in his trench coat. And it's like, what? And then they start walking and no one notices that there's 4 pairs of feet and clearly a little girl inside of his trench coat. And then there are a bunch of other little things like that that happened in the first 3 episodes that just really bugged me and really made me be like, what? Did you not spend money on this show? Did you like have a shortage of ideas? Was the writer's room understaffed? Like what happened behind the scenes of this show that made it so bad? Because I feel like something not normal happened when making this show that made it so bad. Because most of these Star Wars shows were average at best, except for Book of Boba Fett. I couldn't even finish that, it was so boring. But this should have been a slam dunk, okay? A short little story about Obi-Wan going on an adventure with baby Princess Leia. That should have been super fun, pulled in a bunch of money, and probably been the best show yet. It could have topped The Mandalorian easily. But something abnormal happened behind the scenes, I assume, that made it so mediocre and disappointing. So for now, I'll run with that theory, and I'm gonna be giving this show a 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, and also make sure to subscribe, and I hope to see you back next time I publish a video.